And so we could have a picture with the Capitol behind us.
I apologize for making that sarcastic suggestion that ended up in yours. Now I feel like I got left out. I feel like I didn't get my picture.
Yeah. Maybe we can get one after.
Maybe now. After we've survived our first meeting.
Going on, that's fine.
There's a.
I'll go over there. That way, you have an eye on you.
That must be the LA group,
Yeah.
I guess.
After CWDB, that's San Bernardino.
Oh, that would make sense. I thought they were only doing.
Yes, that's right.
I didn't realize they were doing San Bernardino.
My ability to learn acronym, one of the talents.
Superpower. That'll take you far in life.
We're missing that.
You know, sometimes you don't know what hidden talent. Very brown.
What's the word? Acronyms.
My husband's from India.
I think that is fair. I do feel the same about the
Yeah.
My husband's from India, and if you think Americans do this,
My husband
it's like
is,
times 10 on this.
okay, my husband's British, so we'll have to commiserate about having expats.
But you show up
Similar to how they're
like you.
Yeah.
diet.
And there's an acronym.
Okay.
People in this acronym go this way, and people in that, and you're looking at it thinking,
Yeah. And even in.
oh, which one I am?
Which acronym?
all space.
Oh, yeah.
Right, they have their own little twist, that makes sense, yeah.
I mean, even I've heard provision French is different.
Uh-huh.
French in the south of France.
Yeah.
So what have you. I like to tease Mark,
Same.
like tall poppy syndrome is such a thing. And he's like, you don't stand out, don't get too, you know what I mean?
I know.
Well,
French. My husband's Mexican American. But I.
That makes it quite a
No,
shock
not enough.
over here.
To respond back to my mother.
Okay.
But I'm learning.
But when she first, you understand it.
I understand.
Okay.
But I think because the languages have all the same.
I am.
So we're very prompt usually with starting our meeting. We're not casual about it. The only reason it's actually intentional is that San Francisco, they were some technical issue that they weren't able to enter until 10 a.m. So we're waiting for them to get settled. Just giving that disclaimer. So we're gonna immediately begin with roll call, and I'm gonna direct Ben. Ben, if you could please lead us.
Yeah, please correct me if I mispronounce any names, and then also, if you don't mind, your location, so I can take note of that as well, because we do have people joining from the South Bay WIB and San Francisco. We will start with the Honorable Senator Ana Caballero or designee. Councilor Sonia Christian or designee.
Present in Sacramento.
Honorable Assembly Member Damon Connolly or designee.
Present, Sacramento.
Jamil Dada.
Here.
Kmar Devani.
Present in Southern California. Did they hear me?
Yep, sorry, I apologize. Leanne Eager.
I think so.
Diane Factor.
Present in SoCal.
Nancy Farias.
Here, Sacramento.
Angelo. Dean Falk. Lawrence Frank.
Present in Southern California.
Leonard Gonzalez. Jason Hayter.
Present in Southern California.
Jennifer Haley.
Present in Sacramento.
Hala Hiljazi.
Yes, present, Sacramento.
Secretary Kim Johnson or designee. Secretary Stuart Knox or Abby Smith.
Present Sacramento.
Hillary Lentini.
She'll
Stephen
be there
Levy.
later.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
I believe she's coming. She's just not here yet.
Okay. Then we have Stephen Levy. James Mangia. Stephen Monteros.
Present.
Janice Norman.
Present Sacramento.
Robert Redlow. Nicole Rice.
Present Sacramento.
Charles Riojas. Director Kimberly Rutledge, or designee.
Here, Sacramento.
Fabricio Septa.
Present, Sacramento.
Honorable Assembly Member Pilar Chiavo, or designee.
Here, Sacramento.
Aveen Sharma. Honorable Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas, or designee.
Present in Sacramento.
Jeremy Smith.
Present, Sacramento.
Annette Smith.
Present Sacramento.
Bruce Stensley. Superintendent Tony Thurmond, or designee.
Present Sacramento.
Floyd Trammell.
Here, San Francisco. Can we hear?
Amelia Tiagi.
Here, Sacramento. We
Mhm.
heard you, Floyd.
Oh, I apologize. We
Thank
heard
you.
you. And then Gloria Young.
Present San Francisco.
I'd be shocked if there was not.
Is anyone here whose name we didn't call yet?
Yes.
Leonard Gonzalez, San Francisco. I walked in late.
Okay, thanks, Leonard.
And that just. That's
And Annette just,
Sacramento.
and Annette's here.
Okay.
So, thank you, everyone. This is a very strong forum we have. Ben is doing the final tabulation, but we really appreciate the high level engagement.
27 out of 37.
27 out of 37. It's a great turnout. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna go over the meeting process. This meeting is being conducted via teleconference on the Zoom platform. This meeting is being recorded. The California Workforce Development Board is meeting here in Sacramento with satellite locations in San Francisco and Hawthorne. The link to the meeting agenda, board packet information can be found on our CWDB website, which is cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. Public comment is now open and will be heard after each agenda item and again prior to adjournment. Public comments can be accepted via email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov, or I'm happy to recognize it here in Sacramento. We can allow just 2 minutes for each comment per subject, so please make them concise. All public comments received by email will be read aloud during the public comment periods noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So one fantastic, part of the energy that we have, with us, that we have 4 new board members appointed by the governor. So Kaina, if you could please introduce us.
Yeah, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the 4 new members and to give them a chance to address the body and say whatever they want, introduce themselves. I'm just going to do this in a very random order, which is by choosing the first person to my left. So Amelia.
Which is you, Jennifer.
Introducing yourself to our.
Hi, I'm Amelia Warren-Tiagi. I'm here from Pacific Palisades, actually, for 26 years, but come out of a background, have a lot of experience in human capital and kind of future of thinking about work. And also serve on a number of other boards serving the community. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And now passing off to Ms. Jennifer Haley.
We almost had our first fight about who was going to go first. I'm Jennifer Haley. I'm the president and CEO of Current Energy. And so we actually celebrated our 90th year of continuous operation last year. I have not been there the whole time, in case you were wondering. But we produce about 1% of the gas and 3% of the diesel in the state, and we're a renewable fuel pioneer. So we were the second refinery in the United States to produce renewable diesel. And so obviously extremely invested in the future of work and looking at energy and sort of how we're supporting the industry and how we're thinking about the future in a way that doesn't ignore where we are. So thrilled to be a part of this board. I'm also on the board of the Cal Chamber and I chair their foundation, which is exciting. So thank you.
Now on to Mr. Janus Norman.
Janus Norman, President and CEO of the California Broadband and Video Association, represent the cable internet service providers. I have a background in legislative affairs for various entities, including private sector, healthcare, public sector labor as well. So looking forward and excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Hala Hijazi.
Good morning, everyone. Hala Hijazi from San Francisco. I have my own firm, management consultant, working on housing and infrastructure. But my background is about 16 and a half years working for the mayor's office in San Francisco, so Public Works and San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, focusing on workforce development, infrastructure, unions, project labor agreements, and training. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, fantastic to have you guys. And I want you to know any questions that you guys have, we're happy to follow you offline, just to be respectful of everyone else's time, but want to make sure you're comfortable and able to plug right into all of our important efforts. Thank you for your leadership and service. So our meeting dates for 2025, they were in the letter from Kaina to all our board members on December 6th. So just to reiterate, our executive committee next meetings are May 14th and August 13th. For those of you that are members, you know who you are. Our full board is March 26th, which is today, and then June 25th and September 24th. Those are our meetings for the remainder of the year. Our first item for consideration is a consideration of approval of the October 23rd, 2024 full board meeting summary. And so everyone's had a chance to look at that. If there's any comments or questions first, from the board in any of our locations? Emily, is there any public comment, from the emails?
Emily is not here today, but there are no public comment. Jeff is back.
And then, YouTube? Okay, so we can entertain a motion. Move approval. Jamil? Motions, a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah. All those in favor, please say aye.
Yeah.
We have to.
Do a roll call.
Right.
Minutes, sorry.
We have to
Because we
do,
teleconference.
yeah, procedurally, because of the teleconference, we have to do a roll call, so Ben will run us through.
Sure. We'll do a quick roll call to approve the minutes. Briefly, the options are yay, nay, or abstain. And we will start with Chancellor Sonia Christian's designee.
Abstain.
Honorable Assembly Member Damon Connolly's designee.
Yes.
Jamil Dada.
Yes.
Kamar Devani.
Yay.
Diane Factor.
Yay.
Nancy Ferris.
Yay.
Angelo. Lawrence Frank.
Yes.
Leonard Gonzalez.
Yes.
Jason Hayter.
Yes.
Jennifer Haley.
Abstain.
And Hala Hiljazi.
Abstain.
Secretary Kim Johnson or designee.
Abstain.
Secretary Stuart Knox or designee.
Yay.
Stephen Monteros.
Yay.
Amos Norman.
Abstain.
Nicole Rice.
Abstain.
Director Kimberly Rutledge or designee.
Yay.
Fabricio Sasso.
Yes.
Honorable Assembly Member Pilar Chiavo or designee.
Yes.
Honorable Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas or designee.
Yes.
Jeremy Smith.
Yes.
Annette Smith.
Abstain.
Superintendent Tony Thurmond or designee.
Yes.
Floyd Trammell.
Yes.
Amelia Tiagi.
Abstain.
And finally, Gloria Young.
Yes. Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Hillary Lentini is present and I vote yay.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria.
Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you.
Or is she the WID?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can move on to the next item and
We can
then
move on.
tabulate.
So for our second item, we're going to be considering a recommendation of the approval of the North Coast Humboldt Regional Plan, and Ashley will walk us through that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Oh, it's morning, actually. Either way, good morning. Because we have some new folks to the board, I'm going to do a little bit of background on what the regional plans are. So regional plans provide a roadmap for the alignment of resources and investments to meet specific outcomes within the 15 regional planning units. Regional plans are used to articulate how regional planning units will build intentionality around industry sector engagement. They drive workforce development outcomes across multiple jurisdictions and expand on-ramps to career pathways for individuals who experience barriers to employment. So in addition to the federal planning requirements, WIOA indicates that regions should be consistent with the state plan's vision and goals. For purposes of developing cohesive narratives for regional plans, the CWDB published Workforce Services Directive 22-05 back in October of 2022. This provided guidance to the field on both federal and state requirements for regional plans. So the intent of this guidance was to assist in the developing of seamless blueprints for the operationalization. I should not put big words if I have to do them. And implementation of all of the required plan content. So this is the last of the local boards, actually regional planning units to have an extension. So this is a prior plan that we are now finally approving. So the North Coast Humboldt's regional plan modification has been evaluated and meets the requirements as identified and is now put in the board for final vote on.
Thank you, Ashley. Does anybody have any comments or questions for her before we vote in any of our locations? Okay, Jeff, do we have any public comment on email or you?
There is no public comment on YouTube and there is no public comment through.
Okay, we can entertain a motion. So moved. Motion by Stephen. Second by Nancy. Ben?
Okay, our second vote, we will begin with Chancellor Sonia Christian's designee.
Approved.
Honorable Assembly Member Damon Colony's designee.
Approved.
Jamil Dada.
Yay.
Kemar Devani.
Abstain.
Diane Factor.
Abstain.
Director Nancy Farias.
Yes.
Angela.
Yay.
Lawrence Frank.
Yes.
Leonard Gonzalez.
Yes.
Jason Hayter.
Yes.
Jennifer Haley.
Yes.
Hala Hijazi.
Yes.
Secretary Kim Johnson's designee. And Secretary Stuart Knox's designee.
Approved.
Hillary Lentini.
Yay.
Stephen Monteros.
Yay.
Janice Norman.
Same.
Nicole Rice.
Aye.
Director Kimberly Rutledge via designee.
Yes.
Fabrizio Sasso.
Yes.
Honorable Assembly Member Pilar Schiavo via designee.
Yes.
Honorable Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas designee.
Yes.
Jeremy Smith.
Yes.
Annette Smith.
Yes.
Superintendent Tony Thurmond via designee.
Yes.
Floyd Trammell.
Yes.
Amelia Tiagi.
Yes.
And Gloria Young.
Yes.
Thank you, Ben. While Ben tabulates that and we'll report out on the final counts for all of them, just for the public record. But we'll move on to the next item in the meantime. We're going to be voting on the recommendation for approval for the local area subsequent designation and local board recertification for the city of Los Angeles. And so Ashley, will provide us background on that.
Perfect. So again, just a little bit of background. WIOA provides, Workforce and Innovation Opportunity Act, provides criteria for subsequent designation of local workforce development areas and recertification of local workforce development boards. Specifically, WIOA requires the governor to designate local areas within the state and requires the governor to certify one local board for each local area. So within WIOA, local areas must have performed successfully, sustained fiscal integrity, and engaged in the regional planning process in order to receive subsequent designation. Additionally, local boards must have performed successfully, sustained fiscal integrity, and met membership requirements in order to receive recertification. So the CWDB and the EDD published Workforce Services Directive 22-14, which contained the required criteria, associated definitions, and an application to request subsequent designation as a local area and recertification as a local board. The City of Los Angeles local board has been evaluated and met the requirements as identified within the directive and is now put in front of the board for final approval.
Thank you, Ashley. Does anybody, any of our board members in any of our locations have any comments or questions related to this item? Jeff, do we have any public input on either YouTube or email?
There is no public comment on either.
Okay, then we can entertain a motion. To ask a question.
Is it too late to ask a
No,
question?
go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I believe there are like 45, 46 local boards in California. Are we going to bring each one separately? I thought we were doing them in bunches of
They
groups.
weren't ready at the time that everyone else was.
Okay, and I just wanted to say that for the benefit of the new members, that we don't bring all 46. Thank you.
Okay, so we can entertain a motion?
I'll move.
Fabricio and then Jamil. Or
Nancy.
Nancy. Fabricio and Nancy.
Fabricio and Nancy.
Fabricio and Nancy. Ben will run us through the roll call, but for the record, Fabricio was the first time.
And thank you for your patience. This is the last roll call.
Yeah, let's go
of
one
the
more
meeting.
time. We will begin with Chancellor Sonia Christian's designee,
Approved.
Honorable Assembly Member Damon Colony designee,
Approved.
Jamil Dada,
Aye.
Kamar Devani,
Yay.
Diane Factor,
Yay.
Director Nancy Farias.
Yay.
Mr. Farouk.
Yeah.
Lawrence Frank,
Yes.
Leonard Gonzalez,
Yes.
Jason Hayter,
Yes.
Jennifer Haley,
Yes.
Hala Hijazi,
Yay.
Secretary Kim Johnson's designee, and Secretary Stuart Knox designee. Hillary Lentini,
Yay.
Stephen Monteros,
Yay.
Janice Norman,
Stay.
and Nicole Rice.
Yeah.
Director Kimberly Rutledge via designee? Yes. Fabricio Sasso.
Yes.
Honorable Assembly Member Pilar Chiavo via designee.
Yes.
Honorable Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas via designee.
Yes.
Jeremy Smith
Yes.
and Annette Smith.
Yes.
Superintendent Tony Thurman via designee.
Yes.
Floyd Trammell,
Yes.
Amelia Tiagi,
Yes.
Gloria Young.
Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. That's the last vote that we'll be taking. And Ben, whenever all three are done, if you could let us know the final counts.
Sure.
We'll proceed just to keep things moving along. So we're now moving to the updates and discussion portion of our agenda, and we'll begin with response to the LA fires, LA Rise Initiative. Kaino is going to share with us about it and the state's response.
So really from the workforce board's perspective and from our side, we're continuing to work with, we have identified 47 grantees within the LA area have been affected to some certain degree, either by cohort management or ability to execute on their current agreements. We're working through the process of potentially extending some of these agreements to ensure that they're able to facilitate and do what they were intending to do. That work will continue to be ongoing. There are only a few that are subjected to encumbrance deadlines within this fiscal year that are really of concern, and so those are the priorities. Most of the others, we do feel as though there's probably going to be ample room for them to be able to adjust their priorities and criteria. But at this time, we are exercising agreement amendments on at least 3 within the 47. That is what we have. In addition, there's the $10 million that was deployed by Labor Workforce Development Agency. We are looking for supplemental funds currently and trying to think of other ways to move things around and try and provide additional productive capital. But at this time, those would be the
And given that our funding is federal funding also, you know, in terms of the VOSI, the federal government's potential response could have workforce components that are to be determined, yeah. So, and we know that, you know, I know Amelia mentioned it herself, that, you know, that she's in that general area. Anybody who was directly affected or knows people, our thoughts are with all of you, and we're here to be supportive. Are there any comments or questions from the board on any of our locations regarding this item?
I could make a comment at the right time.
Yes, go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, so, I started in the mayor's office like 12 years ago, then I was 7 years at LA Trade Tech, and then 4 years at UCLA Labor Center, and now I'm back in the mayor's office, and so I got a close-up look at this situation. I started on January 13th. And I just want to say that the county was able to get some funds, city-county funds from fire aid, almost $9 million for what's called the LA Region, the LA Region Worker and Small Business Relief Fund. There were 5,500 individuals that applied for the $2,000 per, was all philanthropic dollars. The small business part of it was going to be very much underfunded. There were 6,700 that applied. I'd say half will become eligible. And the LA Rise is stepped up with $10 million to supplement the LA Region fund for small business, which is a complete lifesaver for actually the small businesses that were impacted both in Altadena and the Palisades. We set up a impacted worker. The city of Los Angeles, with our partners, set up an impacted worker and family recovery centers, 4 of them using our work source centers in partnership with the Family Source, Business Source, Youth Source centers, and the county Department of Economic Opportunity. We ended up being the facilitator for the funds, but that's what drove people into the centers. And it was an extremely meaningful contribution that came from LA Rises. I just wanted to thank very much the folks that helped put that together.
That's fantastic, Larry. Thank you so much for sharing that great context and views. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question. Because this is such a unique, or just like I said, tragic situation, what are some of the things that as a workforce we're considering as far as some of the things that are happening?
So, I mean, we've asked for the doula to be extended. We've asked for UI balance extensions. We've asked for, a lot from the feds. We're still waiting on quite a bit. As far as what we were able to respond with, we responded with some rapid response money. We're looking at other pools of funds that can be appropriated for this response. There's some bills that are being funneled through the legislature currently. One that we've been monitoring is AB 338, which directs $50 billion to the region specifically for displaced workers and underemployed as a criticality. So those are the things that we're monitoring currently. As far as additional sources of funds from the federal side, I have nothing to share yet because I don't know what's going to happen.
Again, given that WIOA is federally funded, they have a huge outsized role to play in this, and so we're part of it. We have to stay tuned to see what they can do. But rest assured that we are advocating and we are engaged to bring as much flexibility and resources from the federal side.
And just, I can add something. So DUA was extended again. It was extended until the end of March, and it was extended again, and I'm trying to get the date. It's June, something like that. And we are working within WIOA to work with the counties and the cities for displaced workers. So we do have a couple of grants that are down there in $10 million increments, and it's a reimbursable formula. So once they expend the 10 million, we can ask for another 10 million from the federal government. And so far, we have no indication that they're not going to play with us. So
that's great. Okay, Larry.
Yeah. So thank you so much, to EDD, but the disaster unemployment assistance was just critical in so many ways, and it's available just like PUA was for pandemic, for both employees, but also for contractors. So it's quite a remarkable stepping up. I just wanted to add one thing. If we're looking at the possibility of trying to set up a fire corps, working with, crew-based work, to address the what is called the urban wildlands interface, which quite honestly has not been dealt with appropriately in Los Angeles County. I mean, we have a mountain range going right through the middle of our city and county. We have San Gabriel Mountains. We have all these mountains all through our areas. A lot of communities quite concerned seeing the wildfires, set or not set, but went off in the wildlands. But then blew through two communities that people did not really see disappearing. But the world is a different place, and we really have to do some significant brush clearance. And so there's thoughts about setting up a major workforce development strategy that would do crew-based work, working with public works, city and county, et cetera, to sort of address that. But if anybody has special, insights on doing such a thing, anybody is willing to talk to me about it, I just give you my phone number, which is 213-435.
The only thing I just want to caution, this is a public meeting.
It's okay, I don't care. I don't just, it's fine with me. Yeah, 213-435-9918. I would love to get anybody with some real insight, working in the development of these kind of cores, also in terms of funding for some of this work as well. But we really do need to address this new world that we're in. And anybody with some insights on that work would totally welcome your phone call.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Abby's name.
Yeah, Larry, it's Abby's name. I'll follow up with you. I have your phone number and we could brainstorm some resources.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Abby, you're not going to offer up your number and also.
You already have
Yeah.
Diane?
Yeah, hi, it's Diane Factor, also from Southern California. I just hope that, I think there's going to be a lot of job generation as we rebuild the Palisades and Altadena, and that, I hope Jeremy Smith is thinking about this too. There's going to be a lot of construction jobs, and it's a real opportunity to rebuild, thinking about climate change and thinking about how we rebuild the electric infrastructure, the sewage systems, water supply, and building materials for reconstructing. And so I would love if anybody else wanted to be on some kind of subcommittee to think about the job opportunities here, and also to address climate change as we rebuild communities to be more prepared.
Thank you, Dan. And Jeremy is here, and I'm sure this is something that someone already has. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah, Nicole.
Have we been able to quantify like the level of job displacement that has occurred in the area? Are we getting any data or anything like that?
So EDD is doing an assessment of supply and demand, basically of what is going to be needed down in the LA area. That final report should be out soon.
Okay, and that'll be a public document on the website or something? How can we get it?
Maybe.
Okay.
I mean,
I could add that
results of it public.
Yeah.
So. Yes.
The format in which it's conveyed is to be determined, but the information will get out.
Findings.
The findings.
Oh, I mean, we plan on using it in the city and the county of LA to, that's
right,
for sure.
Okay, Larry?
I could just add that CAL FIRE did a estimate of a number of jobs or livelihood that was impacted. Primarily, these are the folks that were providing services. It's the landscapers and the nannies and the housekeepers and the pool cleaners and the handyman and blah, 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 blah. But at somewhere around 4,000 in the Palisades and somewhere around 5,600, because there are a lot more businesses that burned in Altadena than there were in the Palisades. Again, this is not like complete loss of livelihood, but significant loss. But again, we're looking forward to a better understanding from EDD, and I'm really interested we're all very interested to hear what comes forward.
Thank you, Larry. Jennifer?
I think just one comment to make. Dee Dee Myers spoke yesterday about kind of direct and indirect, right? You have folks whose businesses actually burned, but then you have businesses that might be in Santa Monica that didn't have the direct impacts, but then are losing like their entire customer base, like a florist or things like that. And so I guess it's also thinking about not only folks that had those direct impacts, but also how it reverberates out throughout the county and affects much more than just the areas that were burned that are also already, horrific.
Yeah.
There's also this 175-page report that I happen to see in the LA Times today from UCLA and USC on project recovery. And it does address some of that. It does address some of the workforce shortages, addresses what should be done, how fast permitting should go and things like that. But it's also an interesting 200 pages.
That the LA Times wrote, or?
No, it was USC, UCLA, and I don't know what ULI.
Urban Land Institute.
There you go, Urban Land Institute together.
Disasters.
I was reading an article in the newspaper and it referenced this, so I clicked on it and got the report and, I went down a rabbit hole like.
Yeah.
EDD report will be very important though, so.
Yeah.
With that, stay tuned.
There's the real estate schools primarily at USC and UCLA and the Urban Land Institute, and I think they did an amazing job too. So we're all interested to fully read it.
Aaron Bad, Chief of Staff for Assemblymember Damon Connolly. I wanted to be sure to mention, given the conversation, as it relates to wildfire prevention and mitigation going forward, we have $2.5 billion that will be allocated through Prop 4 for these types of projects. That's why I'm here, and the Assembly member is not, because he's actually at sub 4 budget sub 4 hearing right now. This year, sub 4 will be in charge of creating the spending plan for Prop 4 allocations, not only for the 25-26 budget cycle, but the out years as well. So to the extent you have engaged thus far or want to in the future, I'd really recommend reaching out to the Assembly Subcommittee for staff and members and looking at Prop 4 and the kind of allocations that are going to existing programs, a lot under CAL FIRE and OES as it pertains to wildfire mitigation, vegetation clearing, management, defensible space. There's going to be a lot in there available for grants, block grants for counties and certainly Los Angeles as well.
Thank you, Aaron, for that context, and we appreciate the dedication for us. Thank you.
I'd also share a resource for our colleagues in Los Angeles. West LA Community College has the California Center for Climate Change Education. It's the first of its kind. It's the only center like that in our community college system. So I encourage you all to engage with West LA College to support the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Anyone else? Okay, Jeff, do you have any public comments from you? There you go, public comments from you. Resource. Thank you, everyone, for your input on this critical issue. So we conducted a survey last year, and this meeting itself and the way we're approaching it is partially a byproduct. We listened to all of you for your input, and we structured our meetings moving forward under this format. Brooke is going to review the formal results of the survey, and then we can respond to that.
Thank you, Angelo. Good morning, everyone, members of the board, staff, and members of the public. My name is Brooke Barnum-Roberts, and I'm Chief Legal Counsel for the board. We did a survey of board members back in November 2024, just asking some questions about, what we could do to increase participation and interest on the board, if there was any interest in committee or working group participation, and then what meetings should look like in 2025. given those considerations. And so I'll take a minute or two just to go over the results. So we're all on the same page about how we're approaching meetings moving forward. 22 folks responded. And so we appreciate your response and taking the time to think about these questions and get back to us. And of those 22, 20 of them were interested in participating in committees or working groups on a quarterly or a monthly basis. So that's encouraging and has led us to really take seriously the idea of doing some working group work, right? Let's have this be a working board. A quorum of the 22 that responded committed to attending at least 3 full board meetings in 2025. And Wednesday was the top day of the week for meetings by far. Friday and Tuesday came in second with 3 people voting for those. So we just assumed we'll keep things as is, right? We'll keep meeting on Wednesdays. We'll keep doing these meetings roughly 3 times per year when it comes to the full board. And in person was the top mode of participation with the current satellite locations. There were some other options, but as we all know, it's tough to do these fully remotely without ensuring a quorum in one location. So we're going to keep doing things as we have been, and we will continue to look into other locations or making changes as new board members are seated. There were a couple of comments that were helpful regarding how to ensure board member attendance and participation. I'm going to say there were a few main themes. One was more substance and interaction in the meetings. And I think today's agenda is an illustration of how we're trying to do that. Really, let's pack the agenda. Let's give you all an opportunity to weigh in and have some meaningful discussion. Another theme was more access. Like I said, we will look into other locations. So as board members are seated, if there's somewhere else you would like to have a meeting, let us know. We're open. And then more reminders. So that's been done. You should have calendar reminders. If you don't have them, reach out to one of us, staff, and we'll make sure you get reminded. I joked in the executive committee meeting, if you need a personal call, let us know. We can be like the hotel concierge and give you a call and remind you. We're here for you, really. We serve the board. More education and orientation was another ask. And just to speak to the new members especially, we are putting together an orientation guide and also an expectations document. So I'm sorry we don't have that ready for you today. We should have it ready for you at the next board meeting. And it gives you a lot of background on the board, what we do, what rules sort of apply to our members, and what resources you can look to if you need anything. And then finally, more enforcement of attendance expectations was something that came up. And we never want to, police this, but we appreciate the turnout today. So I'm just going to say we have a good thing going. And so that doesn't seem to be pertinent at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. And again, it's important that we hear from you. And for those of you that didn't respond, we're always open to feedback. I just want to iterate, though, that always there's going to be a number of people that, feel differently about, whatever their preferences are, but we have to try to be as democratic and as possible in terms of the overall consensus of the board representation. Majority of the board will respond to this. And so, does anybody have any comments or questions for Brooke on the survey?
I just have one. Brooke, as it relates to like the guide and expectation document, like the years that I've been here, I don't recall that I received even an orientation. So it'd be great to circulate that through the entire board.
Yeah, we'll do it for everyone. Thank you, Nicole.
Absolutely. Was there any discussion of the topics of the work groups?
Yes. So we're actually, that's part of the agenda. It's going to be, so far, it's the ETPL, which is the eligible training provider list, youth workforce, sectors aligned with California Jobs First and the executive committee. If you have other suggestions, we welcome them, but we will be going over that later in the agenda. Thank you. Anyone else?
Diane, did you have something? I saw your hand earlier.
Oh, yeah, just a question about what is the policy about flying in for a meeting? If you want to attend in person, particularly the executive board?
You mean flying in from Southern California to attend the executive board meeting?
Yeah, or from wherever, so you could be there in person.
If you are a member of the executive committee or the executive committee meetings, then travel can be coordinated through Miranda. But if you're wanting to fly in just to attend it, that you would be a member of the general public in that regard. I think you would be responsible yourself. But and then for the general meeting, yes, transportation. Members is available from Southern California to Sacramento.
That makes sense.
Miranda is the best person.
And the thing is, and then you get a one-night stay if your flight would have left like at 5:30, 6 a.m., which is hard.
So, I don't want to litigate like specific scenarios, you know, in this forum right now, but Miranda is the best person to coordinate all these. She can evaluate your individual situation on a case-by-case basis, but she'll be happy to help you. She's fantastic.
Yeah, no, Miranda's fantastic. I just have talked to other board members who weren't aware of what I'm aware of. So that's why I wanted to bring it up in the whole meeting.
No, thank you for bringing that up. And if for some reason, everyone should get emails from Miranda, but if for some reason you don't have her contact, we're happy to provide that. But she is the person, and she can deal with things on a case-by-case, personalized basis. Thank you.
But just to recap, you are welcome to come to Sacramento if you're a member of whatever the board is that's meeting, and we would be happy to cover reasonable necessary travel costs.
Yeah, all board members are eligible for travel reimbursements to the board meetings.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff, any public? Okay, so now we're gonna move to jobs first, and Kaina will give us an update.
Okay, so bear with me, because I can speak on this for hours without hesitation and without even taking a drink of water. I did this with my staff a few weeks ago, and it was supposed to be about an hour conversation, ended up being a little bit over 2 hours. So I'm really passionate about this project, really ingratiated into the work, and have been, you know, in my previous iteration over at GoBiz was shepherding the origination of it, which was called Regions Rise Together, and then SURF, and is now called California Jobs First. So what has culminated from really almost a 6-year effort in a 2-year planning process done by the regions themselves, developed 13 regional plans. And these 13 regions were designated by a public comment process in which we incorporated both the uniqueness of these territories, what assets that they have, what could be leveraged for economic and workforce development purposes, and also where, you know, the structural growth and opportunity within the state lies. And so what culminated from that effort were 13 regional plans. Those 13 plans have been developed by over 10,000 participants at the local level. You know, the governor loves to tout his numbers, and so he says that at every opportunity he has, that there was, you know, at over 10,000 people, boots on the ground, working on this effort for about 2 years to culminate into these 13 distinct regional plans. Each of them have very different economies. And we're talking about the North State. It is not comparable to Los Angeles, which is in turn not comparable to the Central Valley in most of its aspects. And so that has led to really 13 unique ways to go about economic opportunity and growth within those territories. We then took those 13 plans and aggregated them into what you're seeing on the screen now, which is the Jobs First blueprint, what we're calling this is, I mean, I call it a placemat because it kind of looks like, you know, like an old school lunch tray. But it's organized in these sectors and specifically based on a data-driven approach, which puts specific categories like strength and accelerate and bet there. Those are tradable sectors, meaning that, you know, the items that are produced don't necessarily stay, live, work, and recirculate within the communities, but they go outside of those areas. Thinking about the things that we're dominant in as a state of California and have historical ties to, very longevity of efforts and frankly employ a ton of people, but aren't necessarily seeing the growth that other sectors are having is in that strengthen category. So you look at in there, you'll see the creative economy, arts, media, entertainment, film, TV, manufacturing. When we're talking about manufacturing in terms of strengthen, we're talking about base core manufacturing, not precision manufacturing, not advanced technology manufacturing, those types of things. Financial and professional services, tourism. Obviously, tourism is one of our bread and butter items. But you know, thinking about where is the limited resources that we have to deploy as a state going to make the most outsized impacts in terms of economic prosperity and possibility, That is that middle category, which is we're designating as accelerate. And so the accelerate group is really bordered, all of these 5 items in there are all in the space of precision and advanced manufacturing to a certain extent. And we selected these sectors because multiple regions have identified these as core potential growth areas. Multiple regions have determined that these are where they want their invested capital to go. We're seeing growth targets and growth numbers in occupations and wages, and these have an outsized impact in terms of wage profile to the median incomes, not just within those territories, but across the state of California. And so aerospace and defense, more specifically aircraft, space, satellite, and defense production, we have and continue to have an outsized amount of investment coming to California through venture capital into this space, and we're seeking to accelerate that. A recent announcement was new injected capital into a company called Relativity Space out of Long Beach, which currently employs almost 2,000 people. And in sidebar conversations, because of that investment, we'll be increasing their headcount substantially over the next few years. Obviously, you know, SpaceX is a large company in the Hawthorne area and has a number of facilities that we are obviously trying to continue to work with in the state of California. And we have a major critical asset in Vandenberg Space Force Base. Also, the acquisition arm for the Space Force is housed in Los Angeles. And so there's a nice, you know, circumstantial, if you will, but very critical piece of this infrastructure that is inherent in California and growing pretty substantially. In the life sciences sector, another area of distinct interest, we do produce most of the cell and gene therapies in the state or in the nation, and sort of looking at ways to expand that opportunity through the corridor that is recently being developed in the Vacaville area and is now expanding to north central San Joaquin. In the clean economy, we're talking about onshore wind, solar, zero emission vehicles, and batteries. Obviously, we have a tremendous influence into the clean economy market, being one of the first movers, being, you know, housing multiple companies in this space, and really looking at, not to call her out, but looking at Jennifer as well as somebody who can provide some guidance into how we can accelerate the growth opportunities within those employment sectors.
Happy to provide comment if you're offering the opportunity.
I'm more than welcome. This is a discussion. I'm happy to take any comment as you want.
I think it was interesting because I saw this last night, but it was sort of far away and I didn't pay attention. And I think when it was described, energy was mentioned as one of the anchors. But looking at it, I don't see energy. And I think it's exciting to see kind of on the clean economy. To me, biofuels are missing from this puzzle in a way that's problematic, frankly. And I also think from an infrastructure perspective, having transmission and distribution is great. You have to have molecules to send on that if you're going to be supporting from an energy perspective. And even on the transportation side, I think this is sort of emblematic of sometimes we get so focused on where we want to go that we ignore where we are. And so I think we have to be realistic about where we're going to get transportation fuel for the next decade plus and include that as a part of this plan. And it's not just a transition, we are relying on it right now. And so how do we continue to drive down the environmental footprint and the carbon intensity of the fuels the vast majority of Californians are using while we are building infrastructure and toward kind of next generation fuels? And obviously I have a bias, and Nicole, I'm sure you have opinions on this too. But I do think biofuels are such an obvious critical part of the solution. And we have to be careful not to let, you know, perfection be the enemy of good. That, you know, it would be great if everything ran on unicorn tears, but that's not where we are, right? And so, and so I think sometimes there's a trust gap where people are anxious about incremental benefits. I think if we can build the collaborative relationships to recognize if there's opportunities to do things cleaner right now, we absolutely have to take it. And I think we've seen an evolution around carbon capture and sequestration, where I think there was a lot of skepticism around that as a strategy, and the idea that it was just extending industries that maybe some folks do not want to extend. I hope that we can not have the hubris to think that we have all the answers today, and that those incremental benefits can prove critical if we're going to achieve carbon neutrality. And so I'm sorry you invited me on my soapbox. I will gently step off. But I think this is great. I also think that this is ignoring the gap, which is something that is causing the economy, and I think the governor's office and the legislature, a lot of anxiety around gas and diesel pricing, right? And so what are we doing today to recognize that's a part of the system, and how do we continue to improve it? And I know us as a company, we are on this dual path of being innovators, embracing advanced next generation fuels, but we have to continue to do the blocking and tackling of providing the fuels that our community depends on.
Absolutely. And I don't think you're wrong in any stretch of the statement. I think that where this is trying to be positioned is around where do we prioritize funding related to economic and workforce development, considering where the growth target or where the growth opportunities in employment are, and tied to what the regions have structurally determined that they will invest in concert with any funds that can, because you know how difficult a project is to get off the ground. You require multiple sources of funds to make your capital stack work. And so in many ways, it's a signal of how and where we aim to deploy resources to try and make more sizable impacts into where we're seeing targeted growth opportunities for wage profiles and for the individuals to access these jobs. And so in a lot of sense, this is more of a, yes, I think the ground game and the blocking and the tackling definitely needs to happen. And that's why the anchors are not subjected to like the overarching theme around jobs first. But we know that for any of this to happen, we need the energy source. We need the transmission to be available. We need the connectivity to be there. We need healthcare and childcare services available. So like those are persistent across the 13 regions. And that's why this is more of like, not the whole pool of state funded budget opportunities, but if you look at the subset of what economic and workforce development funding is in the state budgets, it's around $12 billion in total. About 298 billion. So how do we direct that small pie towards the effort where CPUC and CAISO have structurally like multiple billions of dollars more than what we can deploy around these aims? So targeting our resources more towards where the job creation is or the trajectory of job creation is going. And so that's why it's less centered into like maturing of the anchors positions, because we have full agency infrastructure that are focused on that.
And I think what I'm trying to say is not so much as like, I'm not envisioning investment in traditional oil and gas. What I'm saying is, how do we evolve those businesses to become a part of the solution and a part of the future provision of energy? And so I think when I look at the accelerate and bet, like I said, I think the biofuels is a big miss. I think that that's definitely part of it. And I think as we look at workforce opportunities and when you consider the economic mobility and the, you know, high paying great jobs for folks that don't want to go to college or want to have other opportunities, it's how do we, and you and I had a great conversation around this, of how do we upcycle those jobs where they are, right? And kind of mature those industries and accelerate those industries like toward where we're going. So I love this. I think it's a great starting off point. I think my comment just is, I think we're missing a piece of the puzzle, whether it's putting energy somewhere under anchor or infrastructure, but I also think that idea of biofuels and renewable diesel, and it's a huge part of our economy. And it feels like it's somewhere that California has a leg up because of the impact of the low carbon fuel standard and cap and trade. We're attracting it from outside of the state. We should be cultivating it inside of the state.
And the reason why it's currently positioned in the vet sector by bioeconomy is because the job profile and job acceleration, and job growth and the wages are not the same as those that are in the accelerate sector. And so limited to the idea is to maximize the impact to what essentially is the revenue line of the state of California. So generating additional payroll taxes through investments is really a prioritization. But you know, because the job numbers and counts and growth trajectories don't elevate to the same level as some of these, we had to make strategic choices. And that's why bioeconomy lives in the vet sector, or in that vet segment. The vet segment is contained in areas where we have outsized investment coming in from venture capital, coming in from other sources to the state of California, new companies being formed or new ideas being developed here. And they're not showing significant numbers of job creation. And because, you know, as we said, or, you know, where the workforce board sits and where labor workforce development agency sits, you know, having that overlay be predicated on quality jobs that are increasing in access and opportunity in the future is really where we wanted to target our resources. And then tying that to where we know that those strategic investments are coming. And so it was very much so like this is round one of what will be a multiple phase iteration. And as we achieve results, we will have to reassess whether those growth targets are in, whether the pipelines that we form to engender the CTE pathways that you were discussing previously are ready. And then reforming this map based on how those impacts have affected the economy. So my goal within this thing is to have this have a refresh cycle in no less than 2 years. So that way, every time we have programmatic impacts, we can then reflect and adjust and pivot and still use it from the basis of the same foundational methodology to determine where the actors are or where the industry participants are moving.
No.
So that's why I'm super excited about this, because we're trying to do, like, California is unique in the sense that of the 19 structural NAICS, like the high level NAICS codes, we are in first or second place in all but 2 of them, one being mining and one being resource development. So like those 2 are naturally on decline anyway in the state and have it, well, I wouldn't say naturally, maybe regulatory based, but are on the decline in the state. And so like carving out 17 was still too much. And like, how do we direct enough that we can show those kinds of impacts? And the predominance of how revenue is generated in the state is through payroll taxes. So the more better jobs and higher paying jobs with career pathways for the individual gives us that leg up to make the impact dollars more effective and make the multiplier better. One of the things I'm struggling with is how do we create that kind of interest in workforce dollar dynamics and show that it has a multiplier effect within the economies that we deploy those monies, so that it makes it easier for us to go advocate for additional dollars. And that's why this is also predicated on, now that we know where we're going to target, we can actually do a little bit more of that math to see how much of an effect targeted resource development and specific planning on these things actually does. Then make it a little bit easier for our legislative partners and the governor to negotiate around workforce dynamics instead of having 50 different programs with specific entity type engagements. We have a pool of resources that can be targeted towards a shifting landscape of our economy. And knowing that if we stay on top of that economic landscape and the change that is happening on the ground and consistently provide the information backing up where we're seeing those movements happen, then it makes our monies cheaper to program, quicker to direct, and also into the hands of the intended recipients as fast as possible towards the pathway.
And I think that tie to ROI is so important, and being able to adjust as the data supports more investment or less investment. And I will tell you my reaction, I didn't read biofuels into bioeconomy, and so maybe that was my fault. And so I'm happy to see it up there. And this is a great jumping off point.
Thank you. So
May I add a comment?
yes, please.
Hi, Hillary Lentini here in LA. It might be baked in, but I would like for this aspect to be clear here, or at the very least revisited in 2 years, which I also recommend you revisit this map sooner. So that's coming. First of all, this is great. This is really wonderful to see. I applaud the effort that went into this. Most California businesses are small, and most Californians are employed by small business. So I don't see small business here, of course. That is my perspective. That is one of the reasons I serve on this board. And again, you could say that small business is baked in here because it's across every one of these sectors. And small business also is often where the most innovation comes because small businesses can move so fast. So either it's an anchor or there's at least some recognition here that small business is a very critical part of this entire map.
99.7% of employment is 94.3% of total overall spend. It's absolutely critical and important. It is highlighted within the documentation. It's not called out specifically in the strategic section, I think, because your point is well taken, that they exist in all of these spaces. Actually, there's a ton in creative economy. That's probably a million by itself. So solely recognize that, and small business is the backbone and the foundation of not just the California economy, but our nation's economy. So that will definitely be an area of strategic interest, and the Office of the Small Business Advocate, which is housed under the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, has a ton of people working on that charge and working directly on this in concert with LWDA and GOVs. So appreciate that comment.
Great, thank you.
Sure, this is excellent work.
Thank you. Really good. I know this is a multi-year effort, and I'm going to ask a question related to what happened, 8 weeks ago. Is there a world, I'm thinking about what happened in the largest, most populous region in Los Angeles with all the fires. And we talked just a little while ago about the rebuilding effort and how many jobs are going to be created. And I imagine the enormous demand for very specific skilled trades with sort of this unprecedented level of rebuilding. Is there a world to incorporate that into this plan? I know this is designed over many years and this is a more urgent thing, but.
One of the things that delayed the release was fire impacts, and we spent a few days huddling with our folks while we were preparing the finalization of this plan, and did put in a shred on rebuilding Los Angeles in the front end of the document. It doesn't go far enough, obviously. It talks about what we've looked at currently, but it is definitely front of mind. The $14 million that was deployed during the catalyst phase to the Los Angeles region, they have redeployed a significant portion of that capital for direct to build type assistance. I believe they're targeting $3 to $5 million from that fund to go directly to $2 billion from a different pool that's going to be hopefully tangentially handled by philanthropy to plus that up. But there are efforts within that table to do this. But, I think as we look at rebuilding, one thing that Nancy mentioned before, we're doing a study on what the construction needs are going to look like, what the displaced needs are going to look like. I think all of that is going to be relevant. But also thinking about those, I was actually talking to IATSE, which is in the arts, media, and entertainment space, talking to gaffers and stuff like that. Like, is there consideration for them to think about cross-training to do residential construction? Because basically it can do everything that is residential construction currently. It was an interesting topic that they brought up, and we're, exploring some opportunities with the Energy Commission in the state right now. But I don't know where that is currently. I'll probably have to know now that it came back to mind. I'll see what the progress is. But I definitely think that it's going to be front of mind, and it will continue to be front of mind. Not just with that, you have FIFA 26, you have LA 28, and all of this needs to be done in concert, which is going to be a massive training effort around those games and around safety and security and transportation infrastructure. And so there's definitely a lot going on. Every Thursday, there's the workforce development huddle with Opportunity Los Angeles. And every Tuesday, there's another one that's related to the recovery efforts. I'm going to hopefully bring some folks in from there to speak to us and to get more information, especially over to the folks that comment through on Hollywood. But we can always do more. And I think that's what we're all here to do anyway.
Oh, that's great. And that's helpful. And I know earlier you had mentioned outside capital as one of your metrics for looking at an industry. And I know usually we think of venture and those kinds of outside capital, but capital is pouring into the region right now from unexpected sources.
Yeah, and making sure that it gets directed to the intent and to the intended is the one thing that I think we're all so critical of. Because as much as we can shave our admin costs to make sure more of that stuff gets into the hands of the folks that need it, I think we're all going to stand behind it.
I have a question. So first and foremost, I just want to say that I agree with Jennifer, and thank you for making those comments, Jennifer. The second thing I wanted to highlight is that I don't know what the metrics are behind kind of how we're viewing where things are and what we're asking people to, articulate back up to us as we review this and then refresh it in the years. But one of the things that I think is important is to get to a point that Jennifer made, that there are segments of the economy that can help people, that can provide jobs today and then help people transition into skills for tomorrow, because it's very expensive and difficult to try to develop something out of nothing. But when you have people who are placed in good jobs today that are transitioning, then you give them kind of a baseline from which to move from. Mm-hmm. So the learning curve is a lot less steep. Yep. The investment is a lot less costly. And so, that's just one of the things that I would suggest is as we're looking at, metrics and kind of how the trajectory of different, career paths and jobs are starting to pan out, that we think about how we can support people in positions today to move into where that industry is going. And as an example, speaking about clean economy, talking about trucks in California, medium, heavy duty, light duty trucks. Everything is like transitioning into advanced technology because of the rules and requirements that California is setting on transitioning our transportation sector. So all of that is kind of new and high, well, I won't say high tech, but maybe medium tech, but it's certainly not the same kind of thinking about like the technical and the mechanical and the servicing and all of that. Those aren't the jobs that existed in the 1990s or early 2000s when we were just looking at one technology, which was diesel. Even diesel itself has improved. So I think there is something to say maybe about looking at long-term, kind of again, the long-term transition pathway and how we can work with these economies to make sure that people are getting jobs today that are transitioning for tomorrow and being able to support that as well. Because I'm a huge proponent of making sure somebody has the ability to eat today as well as tomorrow.
You're really gonna love the master plan on career education.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever that actually lands.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, very much so what
Becoming
we're
attraction.
talking about is one of the principal points of the workforce transition strategy. Think about oil and gas industry, think about those workers. But, when I think about that as well, I also am constantly worried about, okay, you can transition to another job, but is it going to give you the same individualized value as your previous job, right? So oil and gas workers, structurally paid very well, obviously have good agreements with their organizing partners, have good labor management partnerships, have 90 years of history of doing health and safety and improving health and safety within their facilities, transitioning to areas which don't have those same support services for the individual is where I have some concern. And so thinking about, going from the oil and gas market to a different market, making sure that the wage profile isn't substantially diminished. And we did a study out of, I think it was Martinez, that went down, and it was like the average worker would reduce their wages by something like 60%. And that is not a just transition whatsoever. And that is not really a transition I think we would even want to stand behind necessarily, but how do we get them the right kind of skills to make sure that there's gainful employment with a career pathway that can work for them? Go ahead, Abby. I know you're anxious to say something.
And that may not be in the energy sector.
And it may not be.
Right.
I mean, those workers have processing skills that may be more adaptable to biotech manufacturing.
If you want to go ahead and talk about the skills overlay to this and how there could be multiple opportunities, even, I mean, we can do that the next time. Problem is that master plan has not been officially and formally released, and so we can't really go into a lot of that detail, but that is like the third leg of the stool. If you think about the K-16 collaboratives being, the pathway for educational success before pre-employment, then you think about the master plan for career education, which is trying to get the pathways formed and understanding the individuals access to as many opportunities to a skills-based framework that moves with them in their employment life. And then the sector strategies around here where we're saying, okay, these are where areas of growth. And when we did these analysis, we did it based on the educational attainment required for the occupation. And so most of the growth we're seeing in the accelerate category is in jobs that don't require a 4-year degree or that don't require, a higher level of technical education. And so that's another reason why this area in particular has both better wage profiles for their education levels and attainment possibilities, but also that cross-skilling opportunity too. And so if you think about, some of the things, everything in the clean economy still needs to be built and made. And so part of that fabrication is going to be similar to what happens in some of the other sectors. So I really appreciate what you're saying, because when we do the overlay for a master plan on career education, those pathways and those distinctions on skills-based learning and assessments to the individual, we're going to need industry buy-in. We're going to need them to accept that these certifications are, are valued to them for the skills that are being produced. So that way we can use that as a marker in the sand, make it hopefully bring down HR costs in our organizations in the state and lift up individual access and opportunity to more than they probably ever saw or thought they could.
Well, the only thing that I just want to say, all of that sounds great, and I'm glad that we're thinking and making sure that all the different policy initiatives are working together. But I just want to emphasize that we don't lose that focus that we use in in our education system about how people transition, we don't lose that focus for the adult population that we're trying to move in the workforce development arena, because it still needs to be thought of and built out that way so that people aren't getting lost in the transition. And most importantly, as I said before, that people aren't getting lost about what we can do for them today as we're transitioning to something that is going to take some time to build.
That's like a perfect lead into credit for prior learning and career passport and some of those big things. Hopefully.
It would be great too.
Right?
Or an advisory committee.
We're gonna segue into that right after this, but first.
Sorry, I was just gonna agree with everything Nicole said. But I really do. I love that idea of being realistic about short, mid, and long-term strategies, right? And that they're different, and it's meeting people today. It's thinking about kind of transition. It's thinking about, and then I also just wanted to say, I think, you know, one of the ways that we as a company have been so successful is we're sort of the old experience, you know, kind of folks in the room, but then partnering and being an incubator and kind of catalyst for transformative change. And companies that don't have that structure, that don't have that longevity or inroads into the community, there are beautiful partnerships where you can really develop and scale technology in a way that's not possible if you just have startups. And so I do think it's just recognizing that innovation is a partnership between new and old, and that's sometimes where you get the innovation that sticks and the sustainability kind of across industries. And so I do think there's that skills overlay and opportunity in other industries, but I also think that you have well-established, incredible companies that need to evolve to be a part of the future, and their workforce sort of evolve with them.
Very much so.
If we could go back to the screen with all the video meeting this time. I just want to make sure that if there was someone else wanting to speak. Are there any other comments or questions related to this item from you of the?
Or if you just keep talking, I can do that.
Okay, Jeff, any public comments?
At this time, there are no.
Wow.
So just for the fluidity of the meeting, our next topic is advisory groups. I know Janice mentioned requested about this earlier. This is the opportunity for the board members to have ongoing engagement in between the meetings. And for the fluidity of the meeting, I'm gonna just start with the California jobs first. Just since we just discussed that, how can people engage on that?
Yeah, so, we're still building out the infrastructure in terms of operationalization inside of our house, but, one of the requests that will be coming to board members is how do we utilize you and your networks to increase the two-way communication exchange between industry participants and the state to get a better and clearer understanding of the supply and demand of what they are looking for, what are the skills they need, what are the occupations they're hiring, what is the cadence and speed and pace of that hiring, where they look, like that kind of information, so that way we can program more effectively. So one of the things that I'm really eager to do is to go after not just, and forgive me for starting with the large companies rather than the small businesses, but aggregating as much as we can what those demand signals look like and how we can become a trusted partner in developing pipeline access for the company aligned with their hiring cadence and so that's one of the exchanges that I'm hoping to deputize some board members to at least help with that two-way communication. And then, the advisory board structure unfortunately has Bagley-Keene rules associated with it too. And so this will be a very much so staff supported exercise where we're asking the board members to solicit information from their networks, provide it back to us, be that exchange point, but also introduce us where necessary. One of the things I've been thinking about is like, when I worked in the private sector before, our cost to acquire talent was a line item that wasn't really delved into that much versus the cost of acquiring talent through a different means. Our training programs, especially around supportive services and tying into the skills development, is roughly 12 to 19,000 per individual. And that's inclusive of childcare services, transportation, what have you. Whereas I know HR hiring costs tend to be significantly higher than that. And you can make 2 to 3 mistakes with the culture that is paid for by this type of infrastructure at the 12 to 19,000 range before you would see the same amount of costs from your own perspective within the HR environment that you have. So like trying to get to that point where we understand what their costs are, they understand what is available to them in a more dynamic way, but also for us to then address those critical needs. Like when the CHIPS Act came out, there was a report that 100,000 people were going to be hired or necessarily hired under these different subsets of work. When we go into the companies themselves, they're like, no, that's not what we're going to need. We're going to need this and this and this. And that's the imbalance that we're seeing is the publicly facing reports that are done by think tanks that aggregate this demand in a way that is not true to what the hiring cadence of the HR professional within that organization, or when that project is going to be deployed and how the cadence of hiring is going to go. Thinking about some of our incentive awards, like the Cal Competes tax credit, where the company dictates to us, here's what we plan to invest over 5 years, here's the hiring that we're going to do over those 5 years, here's the jobs, here's the wages. We can take that information and create the pipeline for them or help them in generating that pipeline. So what we're trying to do is be able to get a better pulse on what is happening on the ground with those industry professionals so that way we can program more effectively for them. But then that will lead to their wanting to buy into the system because it's saving them money. And so we can create a more sustainable workforce pipeline flow structure, which is based on the skills that are needed by the employer at the time that they need them. Oftentimes we're running in arrears, right? We're saying, okay, now there is a shortage of X, so let's go after the shortage. I'd rather never get to a shortage. And that's why what my hope is, we'll send out some correspondence to all the board members asking about what areas of interest you have in terms of industry engagement or where you have a network already established and how can we tap into that? How can we help bridge that understanding gap between the organizations themselves and what services are available to them? Not enough companies take advantage of ETP. They pay into it. Not enough companies take advantage of DAS, and the apprenticeship structure. And definitely not enough of our cohorts get tied to good industry opportunities as consistently as I would want. So building out our employer partner networks, building out our industrial engagement, building out some of those types of things is the predicate. Now, we're going to focus on the first on that accelerate because frankly, it's too much to do all at once to try and touch the whole place simultaneously. And so we'll be targeting those piloted sectors within the framework to start this out. But you can expect communication to come in the next probably week or two with who on our staff is going to be working on which project or which pilot, what types of information we're hoping to get back. We have some employer surveys that we've already developed that we would hope to deputize folks to send out to their networks on our behalf. Basically, we want to use you as champions of the work, utilize your networks where possible. This is why we brought in someone like Jennifer, who is tied to the energy industry, someone like Janus, who's tied to broadband, because these are the anchors are just as critical as every other piece of that.
I just want to add two things to what kind of was saying. The Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act that our program is based on, it's supposed to be led by the business community. And that's, again, where you guys' representation comes in. This is public service in terms of, providing this engagement, but it's not about, a soapbox or anything. You're doing value by being here and expressing your thoughts and representing your industries, whether it's the small business communities or the sectors that you represent. And we want this to be constructive. We're very fortunate. We have an executive director who has experience in the private sector, who worked in the governor's office of business and economic development, now is with CWDB, that's trusted by the governor. So this is a great conduit where you can feel like you have a voice, in any chambers you go through, workforce is at the top of the list, but that you not only have a platform to express it, but for it to be recognized in a meaningful way. So I encourage you, we will be reaching out for that solicitation of input, but feel free to take that initiative. We're going to go through all of the advisory groups real quick, just to introduce them to you, and then we'll entertain feedback and questions about overall. You still want to go first? Okay. Yeah.
So just recently in the last executive meeting, we announced that we'll be setting up a working group around the ETPL. 2 meetings ago.
Eligible
Training provider list that is housed within the WIOA structure. 2 meetings ago, we received a substantial amount of public comment related to the process. And so we just recently sent out notices to folks that we want to participate in this working group. Someone from adult education, people from the direct service providers, the chancellor's office provided some contacts from the community college network, our EDD representatives, thank you, Nancy's team, and the workforce board will be aligned in trying to, we'll be working on getting a set of recommendations, practices, things that we can offer up as solutions that will then be presented in the future board meeting. Nancy, did you have anything to add to that?
No, perfect.
Thank you.
And local workforce boards.
Oh, yeah, and up to three local workforce boards will also be on that work.
Carolyn?
I, as the state director for adult ed, I'd love to be on that.
In fact, where's Brooke? Because one of the issues we're gonna run into is that you can't have too many seated board members. So if there's someone from your organization that you could designate as a principal that is not you.
Or
I'm sorry?
like a staff member.
Somebody who is engaged in the ETPL process.
Someone at the local level.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Someone at the local level would be
Someone at the
helpful, who
local
has that hands-on experience.
Got it, okay.
We can follow up after this meeting.
Got it,
and get
okay.
that contact.
No, I know someone.
Absolutely.
The next top group would be the youth workforce.
Yeah, so this effort is ongoing. I don't have yet a strategic direction on what the next step for the youth workforce. We did have some funding go out in the last round. I know we're thinking about allocating additional funds in 25% this year. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, just to say that for the labor agency in partnership with the board, with workforce services branch and the other workforce departments, opportunity youth is one of the highest targeted population priorities. Over the last 2 years, about 40 million of discretionary dollars have gone to support 25 organizations, largely community-based organizations, to set up and deliver cohort-based programs for opportunity youth with a specific sector target, support services, and no race to the bottom, really recognizing that to support young people who are systems involved or multiple systems is expensive work. MDRC was just confirmed as the learning partner and TA partner for this project, which is also part of a bigger effort at LWDA in partnership with both WestEd and Corporation for Skilled Workforce to look at some of the workforce systems outcomes, largely through the local workforce boards around youth outcomes. We just got those through CalJobs. We'll be working with those partners to analyze them and look at some opportunities for systems change to do better. Also, when the master plan is released, and it shouldn't be a mystery, the framework that was announced in December has all the substance and content of the master plan. The plan itself is really context and background. It's a good program example. So if anybody wants to see what the substance is, and we worked hard to make sure that opportunity youth were called out in there. So looking at some of this work coming together and implementation.
So for some of those who are new to this, what is the age range for opportunity youth?
So we're looking at a very expansive age range from 18 to 30. Really recognizing that developmentally, the mid to late 20s are really good times for young people to solidify, if they have babies early, they're ready, if there were systems involved. So a very expansive age definition.
Okay, and then the last one is Brooke will go over how our executive committee is structured.
Thank you, Angelo. Yes, so with the advisory groups being headed up by 1 to 2 board members, that's the vision here. We would like those board members to report back to the executive committee and then to use the executive committee as a steering vessel to bring things through to the full board. So we just in the past, I think we've used the executive committee maybe not quite as effectively as we could have, having meetings just 2 weeks before, which doesn't give us enough time to publicly notice and add agenda items and so forth. So we want the executive committee to do more active steering and then also to be more nimble. So we're going to reseed the executive committee based on who's heading up those working groups. And then have the executive committee meetings be 6 weeks, roughly 6 weeks before the full board meetings. So that we can, incorporate the executive committee's feedback into the agenda for the next full board meeting, if that all makes sense. Any questions or thoughts on that from anybody in the room or LA or San Francisco? Got a couple thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah. And I really want to commend Brooke because the level of detail of every facet of what our organization has been about, how can we put a fresh set of eyes on it? How can we be more strategic about it? It's very comprehensive, and this is one component of that. Thank you for your effort. So now, just in general, does anybody regarding the advisory groups overall, does any board members and any of our branches have any further comments or questions?
I have a clarifying question. Hillary Lentini in LA. Are you saying that seated board members cannot serve on these advisory committees?
We're limited to 1 or 2 board members per subcommittee based on, unless we want them to be publicly noticed, have full public rendering be available. So we're trying to limit that so that way the working group, what we were calling advisory working groups, are effectively able to communicate with Chatham House rules as much as possible to then lead to some more formative dialogue in the executive committee that then will roll up into the full board.
So yeah, follow-up question. Then who are the other members? Who are you envisioning the other members to be? Those we know from our networks and our colleagues?
It will be, so it could be from networks and colleagues. It could be other representatives of agencies from the state that are aligned with Jobs First. So there are 9 title agencies underneath the Jobs First heading, of which not all of them deal with stuff within each sector. And so selected members will be participating to aggregate the supply side on the state, right? So what are we supplying in terms of talent formation, generation, pipeline? And then on the demand side, we'll hopefully have industry participation, which then brings those 2 numbers together so we can capitulate a good program.
Oh, okay, great. And then building on your earlier comments about having key conversations with businesses who are in the business of forecasting 5 years down the line, the workforce that they anticipate, they should all be part of all of these committees too in some fashion.
That would be the desire, yes.
Great.
And to clarify, the working group or committee itself is really just the 1 or 2 board members. Everyone else that we interact with are stakeholders and will be contributing feedback. But we want to keep the interaction nimble and just, kind of be able to hold things over teleconference, I think.
And those who will be running these committees will have dedicated staff support on the CWDB side.
Great. Thank you.
Now, for the new board members, can we get us a brief description of all the advisory board groups and some of the responsibilities?
So the ones we just mentioned, these are currently, we're actually just introducing them now. This is the first time we're introducing them.
Got it.
So all those details will be determined. And I just want to emphasize too, just because there's going to be 2 board members, don't just assume that means you can't be engaged. That express your interest to us, and then we can structure about where it makes sense for people to engage and where it will tap in your networks. But don't self-selectively withdraw yourself, assuming that these things are already predetermined or anything of that nature.
On that point, can you also provide what the expectation of participation would be from our colleagues?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you broke, but all of this information, we're just putting this on your radar and wanting to get your input. But in a more formal, structured manner, all of this information will be disseminated to all the board members.
And definitely allow for commentary from you all about what is possible. Because let's face it, we haven't done this ever. So we're gonna make mistakes, we're gonna ask for too much. You guys gotta push back on us and say, they're never gonna do this. That's okay. We want this to be a good working dialogue and understand that they're only gonna have so much time and we need to be more receptive and more responsive and those types of things. But I mean, our first Our first predicate is we need to start building the trust factor.
Yep.
And that's going to rely on utilization of our boards.
Yeah, just to say that bringing in people who are not members of the board is such a great way of expanding the network, and bringing in new social capital and connection. You know, I'm sure we'll have a regional point of view on that. And it's also a really good kind of entry point for potential future board.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. It works on many levels. Okay, then Jeff, do you have any other comments? Okay, we're now going to turn to our State Rehabilitation Council report. Hillary?
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my SRC/DOR report is as follows. The Department of Rehabilitation updates on January 31st of this year, Governor Newsom appointed Kim Rutledge to serve as the new DOR director. Kim replaces former DOR director Joe Xavier, who retired in December of 24. The SRC is excited to welcome Kim and support her in her new role. DOR has and continues to closely monitor changes occurring at the federal level, including the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education. Youth and foster care. During the March 5 through 6, 2025 SRC quarterly meeting, the SRC learned about DOR's initiative to work more closely with youth in the foster care system. This work group initiative was prompted by Assembly Bill 2083, passed in 2018, which requires that each county develop and implement a memorandum of understanding that outlines roles and responsibilities of various local agencies supporting children and youth in foster care who have experienced trauma. Although DOR is not a mandatory party in the MOU, DOR sought to forge partnerships with county partners and other systems of care serving youth in the foster care system. As a result, DOR has a work group that is 1, identifying training that will upskill DOR staff to serve foster youth with disabilities. 2, strengthening existing partnerships with schools and providers in the county who serve foster youth. And 3, participating in foster care conferences, education summits, and trainings. The goal is to increase the employment outcomes for youth with disabilities who are in foster care. On the topic of the state plan, in 2025, the SRC's Unified State Plan Committee will collaborate with DOR on the 2-year modification to the 24-27 vocational rehabilitation portion of the Unified State Plan. The collaboration will focus on developing the state plan priorities, goals, and objectives. And last item, SRC priorities for 2025. The SRC's priority areas of focus are 1, having interactive discussions with DOR to understand the internal and external barriers to attracting and retaining qualified vocational rehabilitation counselors. And 2, monitoring how the phase out of sub-minimum wage employment settings is impacting individuals with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding Hillary's report on State Rehabilitation Council? Okay, our last agenda item is it's not an action item.
No.
It's still for discussion. It's a revised draft resolution, standards for infrastructure related funds. So Jeremy, Fabrizio, Bruce, and Diane have been leading this effort. I don't know which one of you want to provide the latest update.
We do have copies of the draft. If anyone needs a hard copy, we can distribute those in the room here. There should be copies in the other satellite locations.
There are copies in the satellite offices as well. Yeah. Does anybody want to?
I get a copy.
Nancy wants a copy.
Diane, do you want me to start?
Yeah, if you'd like to start, I'd definitely like to speak also.
Okay.
Yeah, Jared.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Diane, Fabrizio, Bruce Stensley, who's not on the call, I don't think, unless he joined late, and Larry Frank collaborated on the resolution in front of you all. And really, it started at a different time politically in this country, maybe around this time last year, actually, when it was clear, or wasn't clear, but when President Biden had been, over his term, passed a lot of legislation, had signed a lot of legislation and law that was sending a lot of taxpayer dollars, workforce development dollars to California, all over the country really, but to California. And Bruce and Diane and Larry and I and Fabrizio thought that direction from this board about codifying how we are here, this high road model, that kind of the stuff that we talked about a little while ago, kind of about, and that Nicole weighed in on, and that Jennifer weighed in on, about good jobs, real jobs, jobs that have a future, jobs that are a career. How do we invest this money? How do we make sure that it's not just a job to get by, but a career you can hold on to and take anywhere with you, like not unlike our apprenticeship programs in the building and construction trades, where when you journey through your apprenticeship at no cost to you as an apprentice, you can be a plumber, an electrician, anywhere you want. You can open your own business. That happens a lot. And so we thought a resolution, codifying the high road model, California Jobs First, would be something appropriate for this board to undertake and to do. And so the five of us worked on this. It did fall by the wayside a bit as summer turned into fall last year, and many of us were busy politically in our professional lives. We came back to it after the presidential election, edited it down a bit, reflecting the change in the federal administration, took out some terminology, just made it more applicable to the current administration. And it's here before you today. I think, Angelo, I think we're going to talk about it today. The executive committee is going to go back, maybe take in the input, make any changes and bring it back to the board. I don't mean to do your job, guys. Process, bring it back to the board at the next meeting or soon after to codify it.
That's exactly right. We wanted to make sure that your committee is closest to the ground, informed on this issue, for you to provide the framework. Now there's a basis for people to comment on it. We will certainly take this to the executive committee at the next meeting. We thank you for your dedication on something that's been a long time coming. Important values being expressed. Dan, do you wanted to add something?
Yeah, is Bruce present? Bruce Stensley?
No, he's not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Diane Factor. For those of you who don't know me, I've been on the board a long time, and I've been a practitioner in workforce development a long time. And I really appreciate the Jobs First explanation, some of the strategic thinking about high growth industries. And I would just like, the reason I think this resolution still is important is because there's a missing voice. And it's the voice of the people we train, the people that are going to take these jobs, the workers themselves. And so I am still the labor representative on this board. And I want to say that these principles of workers having a voice in the kind of jobs that are created and the kind of career paths, so that they have safe working conditions, that they have respect and a voice on the job, and that they are treated fairly in this. And so some of the industries that you've mentioned are high growth, but they may not represent the kind of quality jobs we want in the state of California. And I think that we want to remain a leader. We are a state known for social justice, for giving people the ability to advance. We want them to be able to afford housing, education for their children, healthcare. And so the idea of quality jobs doesn't resonate unless these kinds of policies that prioritize creation of good jobs, that focus on career development, that focus on project labor agreements. So the High Road model is based on a labor management partnership. And so labor always partners with employers, and we would like to see them trustworthy, good employers. And I know that we have on the board representatives of those kinds of employers. And so I hope that they understand who the low road competition is and that that's not what we're about. And so I hope we have unity on promoting these principles and that they be incorporated into your jobs first model. So I saw strategic sectors, but I'd like to see added to that strategy, a representation of the voice of labor.
Sure. Thank you for that context and your important leadership in this space. And does anybody of the board members in any locations have any comments or questions?
If I may, what I would suggest is, take some time to digest this. Please email us with any commentary or comments, changes, syntax, whatever. We'll aggregate that, present it to the exec committee, get to a finalization of the draft, and then submit this for the board for approval in the next full board meeting. But in the next, take some time to digest and understand, ask the questions you need of our staff. We'll be happy to provide additional context as well. But we'll aggregate that commentary and then develop a final draft in concert with the four folks for presentation in the next executive meeting.
I have operational questions.
Yes.
So adopting this policy functionally change what aspect of how we are making decisions?
Formatively, not.
It's more of a statement of values and codifying different things that we're doing in this space. This was initiated by those four board members specifically, Jeremy Fabrizio, Bruce, and but it's not a deviation from anything that we're already doing.
If I may, add a small business perspective, while I understand and appreciate the role of labor in lots of our industries, most of those emerging industries that were on that screen do not have labor represented employees. In the same way that many small businesses that are in those spaces are not labor represented. And that's a misalignment at this moment in time. And at some point in time, they very well may be. Who knows? But you don't want to put something into place that would then prevent us from supporting those businesses as they grow simply because they don't have current labor representation.
Yeah, in here in LA too.
Larry?
Yeah, I would just say, so I did participate in the conversations, and we all know this is advisory, right? As kind of a statement of values, as you said. And I would also just say, I think it's also aspirational, because in fact, as was just stated, there are industries that do not currently have labor management relationships, broad industries that are in that category. And which is not to say that we don't invest in those industries, but I think there's also a sense that in terms of opportunities for good paying jobs that have family supporting wages, there's also a desire to try to also make sure we do invest in those jobs and understand the value and a significant benefit to those jobs for a lot of people that are working people. Yeah.
And another addition, if I may. All right, great, thank you. So Hillary Lentini here in LA. It might be as simple as just adding some language like and private business employers so that we have labor and we just make the umbrella larger. And then just to build on that previous comment. And then I wanted to share, and this is not because I am recommending it anyway, language that might be more palatable to the at the federal level right now. But sustainable is becoming an out-of-date term, and I am recommending that we consider the word resilient instead, which means so much more now, and also brings to bear this entire conversation we've been having today, that resiliency is also meeting workers where they are, upskilling them where they need to go, giving them careers and not jobs, And so that is a simple fix too. And I know you're asking for us to give comments later, but I think it's really important that we have this discussion now while we're here so that we see a much more fully formed or refined version of this, which otherwise I think is really great. And I commend the members who pulled this together because it is important for us to put it in writing now more than ever. And thank you for letting us do that too, Chairman.
No, I absolutely agree. I think there's going to be further refinement on this in terms of the language with this. And so I encourage whoever wants to provide the input to directly reach out to Jeremy, Fabrizio, Bruce, or Diane, and then they can make a determination, or Brooke can provide a cutoff of when it needs to be finalized for the executive committee to review. But this isn't the final thing. This is just the first time we have like a fully, a full framework to respond to. But this is certainly still open for feedback, and we welcome that input from Ned, Hillary, and all of our colleagues.
Everybody has Larry's phone number now, so we can.
I guess the last thing that I would say is, while for this body, it may be an advisory, once you put it out in public, it's your policy. So you need to be very clear about your intentions behind it, because people will form their own narrative, right? And they'll decide that's what it is, so that's what the agency's doing or whatever. And especially, like y'all are federally funded, right? So I think it might behoove us to not only get the input from the group, but just to maybe take a pause, take a step back, and look at it through the lens of what we are doing today. I don't care what happened in the infrastructure bill. It was fantastic, great stuff. There are players at hand that are doing their best to not only undo the infrastructure bill, but to take us back to the 20th century, to undo the 20th century.
Yeah.
So I think in that lens, this is a different conversation than it was probably when y'all started the work.
Yeah, especially on the backside, you read some of that, might need to be thought. Oh, so all those points are taken. I just want to mention that this isn't something where even after the input and however it gets put into form, it's not just automatically adopted at that point. There will be a formal vote that the board would have to take. And so this is, this is for consideration for everyone.
I just want to say, I so appreciate the comments that you made, Annette, right? Yeah, excellent. And I think it's a good lens to look through it and to recognize that there are, great employers, and employees should be treated well regardless of labor representation. I also think that idea of intentionality of we have to message why we are adopting this document. Otherwise, people will fill in the blanks, right? Negativity fills a communication vacuum. And so I think some of what I'm hearing is sort of downplaying the impact of this. And then I think it goes to, well, then why are we doing it? Like, what is the purpose? And so I think that would help me as a new board member. I completely align with the idea of we want to support careers and jobs that treat people well, that there's, dignity, high pay, support, all of the things. And so those values resonate for me and for my business. And I like the idea of that's what we're doing as a board. Again, it's just connecting it back to, we have to be very explicit about what the purpose is of documenting this and what it does going forward, because, and I'm sorry for being repetitive, people will fill in the blanks in a way that we might not agree with.
Yeah, very important. So thank you for that input. There's a lot for us to reflect on regarding this, and there'll be additional conversations. Oh, sorry.
Yes, no, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Sorry, Chris Morales, Legislative Director for Small Business. I had two brief questions. Firstly, for perhaps the drafting members and staff of the board, on the 8th resolve clause where it states that the board will continuously monitor labor standards, model, et cetera, at the federal, state, local levels. Could any of the drafting board members provide some clarity on what that entails for the workforce development board staff? Is that in addition to existing responsibilities, are we requiring them to continuously monitor this in perpetuity, or is there any clarity they can provide as to what that clause is requiring their staff to do?
Yeah, I would turn to the people, but it's an important question in the sense that it does obviously impact the staff's, bandwidth and responsibilities. But Jeremy,
We're happy to hear back from staff about how they would want to wordsmith that.
Yeah, thank you for raising that.
And then my second question, I believe, Chair, you had mentioned that this in itself will continue to be edited, that this isn't the final draft. So in terms of process, does that mean that there will be reiterations of this prior to our next meeting? And will there be a potential vote in the next meeting, or is this going to be something further on down the line?
It would be my intent to solicit feedback from all the board members as quickly as they can, so we can aggregate and then adjust the draft and resend to the members for their review. And then in exec meeting, we will be voting whether or not to take it to the full board meeting at that time in the iteration that it is on that date.
So I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Brooke, but our executive committee meeting is May 14th next. Looking backwards, when would you need this?
Right, so we publish our agenda at least 10 days before the meeting. So if we can get feedback by mid-April, that would be ideal. And I'm just going to clarify, please don't send feedback on this directly to any other board members. We don't want to inadvertently have a public meeting rules violation. So, but if you could send it to staff, that'd be great. Either kind of directly, Miranda, me, whoever's email address you have, just send it that way.
Yeah, that's an important point because the committee has done its responsibility in at least putting something forward. So thank you for those are excellent points. So mid-April, it will be the cutoff. Let's just say April 15th.
Sure.
April 15th will be the cutoff, and so any input you have, and again, there will be a vote if it advances beyond that. So this is not anything definitive as of right now. Thank you, everyone. So, is there any public? Okay, so we're now at the general public comments portion. This provides an opportunity for members of the public to address the boards on items of interest within the jurisdiction of the board that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. Pursuant to the Private Keen Act, the board shall take no discussion or action other than a referral on any issue brought forth here because they are not on the agenda. Jeff, do we have any public comments? We have any in person? Okay, please feel free to come up. Where should we? You're right here. Just so that way the mic can give you. You could please introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deacon Ruben Solorio. I am the new CEO for the Center for Employment Training. I'm accompanied here by my staff, my Vice President of Public Affairs, Sarah Garcia, and my Director of Government Relations and Workforce Development, Carlos Lopez, which we took out of retirement to come and help me during this transition. As many of you know, a trailblazer and an amazing woman I am following, which is Melinda Sapian, who was with our CEO for 25 years and the founder after 57 years serving at CET. We swapped, so I was on the board of directors for CET for 3.5 years. She took my spot on the board of directors and I took hers behind her desk. And it's been a wonderful transition period in which our Center for Employment Training is trying to build new partnerships in the community, rebuild old partnerships, and then create new ones. One of them being Job Corps. So we just developed a relationship with Job Corps. So we're training all of their young people that are housed with and served by Job Corps. That's very exciting for us. We also have a new partnership with Prosperity Lab, which is transforming our culinary program. So we used to just train culinary students to go out into the workforce. And now actually we're now training through with this partnership, entrepreneurs. So people that will be small business owners, their own food trucks, their own kitchens, their own catering companies. This is really transformative for us to not only train those that will be in the workforce and the jobs that are created, but also that they can be small business owners. So we're thinking about that even as we are training future electricians, future HVAC, how can we also train 10 seconds, how can we also train the possibility of being their own business owners? So really proud to be here around all of you and how we can better serve and partner with each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Is there any public speakers at any of the locations?
Not in LA.
Okay. All right, then
We can report on the vote.
we have just for the record, we want to give the official tallies of the action items that we took.
Partially due to our excellent turnout. The approval of the minutes passed with 20 votes. The approval of the North Coast plan passed with 24, and the approval of LA's plan passed with 26.
Okay, thank you so much, Ben. So at this time, we will adjourn the meeting at 12:08, 52 minutes early. Thank you everyone for your great